This is Gateway City Sports.
It's a trap!
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
This is the Team of Rivals podcast.
Everything you want to hear from the big sports to the big screen.
He's all by himself, fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No!
Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
He doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
Time winding down, Michael for three. Yeah! Yes! She is gone!
I can't believe what I just saw!
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy! You believe in miracles? Yes!
You may fire when ready.
What?
Good evening, Cubs and Cardinals fans. It's Thursday, January 7th, 2021, our first show of the new year, and this is the Team of Rivals podcast, proud members of the Gateway Sports Network. You know, folks, we alluded to this in our social media posts leading up to tonight's show. It's a shit show out there, and our goal this week in particular, as in every week, is to give you a little bit of an escape from the everyday grind, from all of the arguing and fighting and fussing that's going on all over the place. Our hope is to give you a little bit of a refuge, at least for an hour, whether you're watching us live or you're listening to us after the fact on the audio podcast. And you know, this week in particular, there's one thing that I think that we can all agree on, one common ground, whether you're on the left or the right, the north or the south, the blue or the red, and that is that the San Diego Padres suck. But before I bring in my co-host, I just want to remind those of you watching us live to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and be sure to ring that bell on YouTube so that you receive notifications anytime we post new content. You can tell, obviously, that we're working with some new intro language, so I'm going to stumble a little bit. Joining me tonight, as always, number 48 on the top cards on Twitter, Ron Nuttall, and of course, our permanent, semi-permanent, who knows? We decide from week to week. He's back with us, even though it's a new year. Our guest co-host, Elliot Dewey. Gentlemen, how you guys doing? How is the new year treating you?
It's funny because as soon as we say, hey, man, isn't it so nice to be out of 2020? If you happen to turn your TV on yesterday afternoon, you're like, what? Did the calendar flip or not? Are we still stuck in limbo? Strange times. You've said it, Pete. I know we talked briefly about it last night. We said we wouldn't bring anything like that up here. We're not going to. But so far, the new year has been, I guess, I just don't know. The thought is, can shit get any worse? I've got to quit thinking that, because every time I think that, it appears to get a little bit worse. As far as how's everything going on the baseball front, you tell me, because we're all in the same boat here in the National League Central this year. We've added nothing, and we've shipped parts out, let parts walk away. We're feeling a little hollow.
It's December 38th, 2020, right? Isn't that what today is?
It is.
So I kind of feel like 2021 has so far said, "Hey, hold my beer." So
yeah.
We had a nice 5 days.
Here we go.
So, gentlemen, obviously last week when we thought that we were off, it almost felt like we should do a quick show, because out of nowhere, we went from, the Cubs are listening on Darvish, to the Cubs and Padres are deep into talks on trading Darvish, to this thing's happening, and Cubs Nation collectively lost its shit on that trade. What are you thinking? Too light, just right, too early to judge?
I mean, these are prospects. You never know. I mean, we've seen what the San Diego Padres prospects have done the last few years, which is it's been pretty great. I mean,
Yeah,
I would have almost
started out
traded
as San Diego prospects, though. They've stolen them from other systems. Or just
well, yeah, that's true.
It's fantastic.
So,
These guys are so young they couldn't have been stolen from another system.
No, I mean these guys are years away. So I mean, number one, that should tell everybody it's going to be a while, and that there's probably going to be some coinciding moves here in the future. That just it was a salary dump. I mean, that was my first takeaway, and then there's another long-term plan. So,
well,
how much did you cackle and really enjoy your New Year's Eve knowing that the Cubs had? Well, I mean, it's hard to say they threw in the towel on the NL Central because they did get back a decent pitcher. It's not like Kyle Davies is trash.
Yeah.
But as bad as the NL Central is right now, your team has to be the favorite in the division only because they haven't given anybody away yet, other than Colton Wong.
Yeah, it's a war of attrition by arms. It feels like, right? I wouldn't call anybody the favorite right now, Pete. The one I don't know, the only one I don't know that's the favorite would be the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are now They don't have Josh Harrison anymore. We could probably make a pretty decent roster out of players that have just exited the National League Central by the time it's all said and done, right? With January being the new December, according to John Mozeliak, by the time we're done with this month, we could have an all-star team assembled that were former National League Central players, especially if you go back a couple years. So this division isn't giving people a lot of reason to fill up a stadium in 2021 if we're able to, or if people are even willing to. So the trade itself, look, you couple the Darvish one on top of Snell, on top of this signing from this kid from South Korea, who a lot of teams were bidding for, and Cardinals included. Of course, I don't know what their bid was. It was probably nickels on the dime compared to what he actually got. They have a calculator that tells them what people are worth, and I don't know how well that's been working for him, but my father's watching. It's 9/11. Dad's still awake. That's okay. He always, when I call him out on this, he always leaves. He doesn't want me talking about him. But when you stack all these moves on top of the pot that they've done, looks really good for them. But yes, I'm a member of a couple National League Central trash talking groups out there on Facebook, and I think not very shocking to me. I think most of them most expected him to be moved. But yes, there's some griping about what they got in return. But it just feels like a lot of 21's just going to be 21. We don't have high expectations for it. What was Darvish going to do for us long run anyway? He had a great year in 2020. He had a pretty good 2019 as well. I think most people were resigned to the fact that the Cubs are going to kind of mail it in for a year or two here while they kind of retool, if you want to call it, rebuild. I don't really know what it is yet. I wouldn't call it a full gutting. You still got some pretty big names there, but I don't know. I feel, boy, I will not go politics, but we have a certain leader who won't show his face right now, and I feel like Cub fans are kind of the same way at this point. They're like, they're just not talking. A feeling of resignation for 2021 is kind of the sense I get.
Well, that's because the circular firing squad has formed in Cubs fan nation, and they're all taking shots at each other to see who can get the hottest take and condemn the Darvish trade the loudest. But then all aim turns on the occasional Cubs fan who says, "Wait a second, let's be realistic about it." And Ron, I think that your remove from this actually provides probably the most realistic take on this thing, because you're right. Is Darvish realistically going to be a better pitcher than he was last year? Probably not, which means that there you go. Wait, but he's still moving.
I didn't press anything.
I didn't do anything, Elliot. Not this time. Sometimes we just like to randomly just remove him from the feed.
Yeah,
for no reason. Okay, go ahead, Pete. Sorry, you were.
But anyway,
you were going.
So really, realistically, if you look at it, they traded Darvish at the top of his value because he's a 34-year-old pitcher and he's got 3 years left. And yeah, it's a bargain, but if you realistically think that you're not going to win the World Series, but you can still manage to stay in contention for your division, well, then it's not entirely a terrible move. And I know that a lot of people were outraged at the quality because these guys are so far away, and they were like, I think 15 and 16 were their top rankings in the Padres farm system, but it just tells you how good their farm system is, because I think they both two of them vaulted into, I think, the Cubs top 10 in most rankings.
I've got a request here, guys.
One was number 11.
Hold your thought there, Elliot. I got a request here, and I've got to go full camera, and I don't want to.
Okay.
There you go.
That request must have come from El. For those of you listening after the fact, Ron has received his Shuck It Trebek t-shirt.
It's the best. And yes, Elle inspired me to get it because she was wearing it, I think, close to when Alex Trebek passed. And his I believe, I could be wrong, didn't his last Jeopardy episode just air?
Yeah, just aired.
And okay, so I don't know if the code still works. Do you guys like this? Go to Gorilla. Shit, hold on, I'll come back. Finish your thought.
Note to anybody at Gateway City Sports listening, please send all ad copy courtesy of Pete at the show at teamarivalspodcast.com. Clearly, Ron demonstrating his facility for advertising rates.
Hold on, I'm pulling it. Twisted Gorilla. Go to twistedgorilla.com, and I think the code still works, but you enter in Holy L15. That's HOLYELLE 15. And you get a discount on that. But yes, she was the inspiration. And I got to tell
you, Ron, that Suck It Trebek looked much better stretched across Elle's chest than across yours.
Well, I think she looks tougher in it than I do, 100%.
That too.
100%. But yeah, no, she wears it a hell of a lot better than me, no doubt.
Well, as a reminder to Mike and anybody else who is watching us live, don't forget to click the like button. And don't forget to subscribe as well. We know you're watching us live, and so we don't want you to miss any of the upcoming shows, which allows us an opportunity to transition into the next thing, which actually ends up being closely related to the Darvish trade. And that's the news that broke today, that the Mets and the Indians finally worked out a trade to move Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, which I think caught everybody off guard, that Carrasco got paired with that. And the Indians got back, Ahmed Rosario and 3 prospects, 2 of which are, I think, probably in the same boat as the Cubs prospects. They're probably 3 or 4 years away. And the interesting thing about it is they were ranked higher in the Indians organization than the prospects that the Cubs got from the Padres were. But from what I read, I don't know that they were necessarily better prospects than what the Cubs got back.
Well, with it's just like, I think you made this point. We had talked about this, Pete, that even a trade that, like, take the Cardinals trading Randy Arozarena. Now, granted, he's a rookie essentially, right? Trading him, but then getting an even younger rookie, or let's just call it a newer rookie to Major League Baseball. Not even a rookie, but a minor leaguer who's only made it up to AA. Sometimes you're not going to know about these trades. You're not going to know about how some of these trades end up for 2, 3, maybe 4 years. And people with short attention spans are the ones heads are going to explode because they want that instant fix, that instant satisfaction. When you deal away a guy like Francisco Lindor, if you're a young, hell, even old Indians fan who's just paying attention to it every day and can't wait for the season to get started, and then your star player is shipped out, like you want to instantly see something kind of fill that void up a little bit. Some people just can't see out 3 or 4 years that this may pay off later. I certainly understand the frustration. I get it. The Cardinals don't generally have to do a fire sale like that, so we haven't had to ship many big names off. But I get what it feels like. We've certainly received big names over the years: Paul Goldschmidt, Scott Rowland, Mark McGwire. I mean, we have a huge list of people we've had to acquire because we don't win on the open market. And luckily, the Cardinals had always had a reputation for fleecing other teams because you never heard of those rookies they traded off. Like, they disappeared. Brett Wallace was supposed to be this hard hammer in third baseman. I find a video of him throwing because I can't believe that's a major league arm. But he was a heavy hitter in the minor league, heavily favored. Like, God, just get this guy up. He's gonna tear the cover off the ball. Once he was traded for Matt Holliday, we never heard from him again. He went to Toronto. Then he went to Houston. They moved him over to first base. It's like, who the hell thought this guy could throw from third? His thighs were, I think each of his thighs were as big as L just by herself, with all the muscles and everything. I mean, he was, I don't know, I guess my point was long-winded. Like sometimes you give away guys and you think, oh, you're giving away too much, and they never show up. Or they just never pan out. And sometimes you got to wait 2 or 3 years. This Arozarena trade that Cardinal fans are all up in arms about. You know, if this Matthew Liberatore comes up and he's a solid part of the rotation for many years, that trade was worth it. It remains to be seen. The Cubs deal felt like it obviously was a salary dump, and they're hoping, hey, the couple lottery tickets they got in return, one of them might pay off, at least be a solid contributor down the road. And it happens in Cleveland's. It sucks. You know, I can only imagine how that feels, a star player just being shipped out in their prime. He's still a young guy, right? He's only like, what?
27.
27, yeah. So
the Cubs may see that later this year. So they may see that with Chris Bryant. So we don't know.
I hope so.
And if reports are to be believed, it may happen before spring training because this afternoon it came out that, well, in the last 24 hours, we've heard that the Dodgers are considering Bryant if they're unable to re-sign Justin Turner, and that the Mets are also considering a trade for Bryant if, depending on what else shakes out, that they may be looking for that additional bat. And, you know, Bryant does provide some flexibility because he can not only play third, but he's also at least capable in left field.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? Kyle Reese tweeted earlier this morning. You know, the most interesting thing to him, I'm paraphrasing this, I don't remember exactly what he said, but the idea was my favorite thing about this Lindor trade is trying to anticipate who the next Dodgers infielder they're going to acquire is going to be, you know, just a counter punch. I'm not surprised to hear the Dodgers rumored in anything at this point. If they had, because Justin Turner's gone, right? He's a free agent.
He's a free agent, but reportedly where they're not coming together, I think, is on years. Mm-hmm. I think what I read recently is that the Dodgers were either offering him 2 or 3 years, and he's looking for a 4-year deal.
He's
I think I think the Dodgers are offering him 2, and Turner wants 4 years, and I think he's 36, right?
He's 36. I don't know why he thinks. Yeah, I mean, he's lucky if most teams are. I would call it lucky if he gets 2. Right, I'd be thankful if you get 2 that takes you to 38. I just can't see anybody going beyond 2. And yeah, I can understand that. Sure, he wants to ask for 3 years. He's not going to get it.
And I know that he was a late bloomer, but that cliff has got to be coming soon. He can't continue to perform the way that he has offensively.
Yeah. You would think. But look, here's the thing. You know, I don't want to gloss past this, and that's just talking about the Mets briefly. You know, I'm gonna take credit for this one. Because Lindor is where I thought, New York is where I thought he would end up with the Mets. Not necessarily by trade, guys. I thought going into his first free agency season after 21, I thought, man, it's got Mets written all over it. Big city, flashy player, good player. That team's got a new owner in Cohen. He wants to make that team relevant again. He knows he needs big names behind it in New York, competing with the Yankees and Boston and everything else out east. I don't think there's another place Lindor was going to end up unless it was with the Mets in free agency. So I'm not surprised that this happens now. I think he's there to stay.
I tell you, you know, looking at this trade, and I was trying to divorce myself as much as I could from my understanding of the Darvish trade. But looking at the return on what the Indians got, if anything, I think the Indians got a worse return because not only did you trade a position player who has far more value than a starter like Darvish, and who's one of the best players in baseball in Francisco Lindor, but you also partnered a young, good starting pitcher as well. Ahmed Rosario is a post-type guy. You know, he's not a prospect. He's a major leaguer, but he's not who people had projected him to be. And then you got another shortstop and then a pitcher and an outfielder, and the pitcher and the outfielder are similar to what the Cubs got. They got lottery tickets. So ultimately, when you look at that, I don't know, it feels to me like the return on the Indians trade is maybe a little bit lighter than what the Cubs got on Darvish. I don't know. What was your reaction when you heard it, E? Because we haven't really heard, you know, Ron kind of filibustered there a little bit. What was your reaction when you heard that Lindor actually got moved to New York?
My first thought was New York has really made some moves, and they're positioning themselves to not be behind Atlanta anymore. They're this new ownership group, right? I mean, they're serious about winning again, and they've made some really great moves. I think I feel like looking at this trade that the Indians got they got swindled a bit. I have the same feeling. Like I feel like the Cubs got swindled a little bit. So I felt like Darvish was at least a little bit more. I mean, maybe you get less prospects and you get a higher prospect from San Diego. Because, I mean, with the Cubs' luck, I mean, we've seen how these prospects turn out for us. So it really hasn't been all that good.
And, I wonder if that's not part of the calculation, right? Is do you take one prospect who's closer to the majors, or do you switch over and you roll the dice and take 4 lottery tickets? Because if that one prospect, that one solid prospect that you get from a team doesn't play out,
right? Well,
then what do you have?
You're up a creek without a paddle, is what you are.
Yeah. All right, guys. So just a quick break here. I had to. Did he disappear, or is it just my screen that he's now a black box?
I think he shut his camera off.
Okay.
No, I'm here.
Not you.
No, he's gone.
Oh,
not you.
Okay.
So it's only me and Elliot right now. I don't know what Pete had to leave for real quick, but maybe he'll be back. Hope so. So since we have Braden on the line, Greg Amsinger on 101 ESPN, it must have been a radio interview because I'm seeing it on the Facebook chat here. He says Yadi to Philly is what his prediction is. So Braden, let's start with you. That's your guy.
All right. Well, first of all, I got a lot to say, and so I'm just gonna run through it all and like a runaway train and just get my segment, because I know once I talk, I'm not gonna rely on being able to say a lot more again. So I'm just gonna get it in one take.
Yep.
And go.
So, Brady, what you're saying is that we should mute our microphones and go get ourselves a beer.
You have.
Yeah, if you like.
I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. I've got the clock. Go.
All right. So first of all, I could see Yadi potentially going to Philly. It's they can still win, whatnot. If Romiato goes somewhere else, cool, whatever. Solid prediction. Lindor to the Mets. Apparently, everything was happening when I checked my phone after biology class. Because yesterday I checked my phone and Greg Cody had a nice cameo for me. And then today
don't jump ahead. That's a clip I have for later. So
I'm saying everything in 2 minutes.
Get to your point, son.
So Lindor gets traded, and honestly, everyone's talking about the Indians' return. I think a lot of these teams, when it comes to returns, are saying, okay, if we're going to give you 4 players, or we're going to give you a lot of prospects, we're not going to give you a top 3 or top 5 guy. Indians got a MLB ready player, and then they got number 9, number 10, and I'm not sure what the other guy was. So I think that's kind of maybe the new meta, so to speak, for returns, especially Lindor's on a 1-year deal, which that could have maybe chopped the price down. I'm jealous of Steve Cohen, not gonna lie. I wish our front office was just made moves like a fan. Like, honestly, Steve Cohen reminds me of myself when it comes to MLB franchises. Just kind of feels like he's playing a video game. I'm jealous that he tweets and just asks what the fans want because he has so much money. So that's my thoughts on that. And Greg Cody, you're the man.
10 seconds.
Can't wait to hear the clip on the soundboard.
Okay.
And you never know.
Okay. One thing, Pete, I want to ask you this. An owner making moves like a fan would. Like, we know one, and we know one very well. His name's Artie Moreno out in Los Angeles. Right? He made moves like a fan, and where's that gotten him? He's went out and bought Pujols. He went out and bought, what was that, C.J. Wilson. And then the next year he went out and bought Josh Hamilton. That guy tried to buy his way in. He tried to buy one. There's only one team I know in recent history that's bought one, and that goes back to 2009, the Yankees picking up Mark Teixeira and a shitload of other people. But go ahead, Pete.
But, and actually I was going to give the Yankees as an example because you remember when George Steinbrenner was running that organization like a fan and he didn't have a strong general manager who could stand up to him. You remember all the terrible moves that the Yankees made throughout the late 70s and the 80s when they were irrelevant. Joke.
They were irrelevant.
They were right because Steinbrenner was completely in charge and he was making the calls and he was doing exactly this. And here's what I'll say about Steve Cohen. And I get why people are saying, "Oh, I wish my owner was like that." Everybody needs to remember Steve Cohen came in as a baseball owner after the pandemic hit. So his bottom line as an owner did not get touched by the 2020 season. He came in after all that. So he can come in with all of his money intact and he can make all those organizational moves. Give him 5 years. Give him 5 years when it actually matters to him now, because you're right. Right now, he's playing with house money. He has a distinct advantage over the other owners in Major League Baseball because he's not having to recoup losses from the last 12 months, whereas every other owner is. So he can make these big splashy moves. The only other teams that can really match him are the Dodgers and the Yankees, and even they are really largely sitting out the market this year.
Yeah, and you know, it's going to be interesting, fellas, because this is the last year that we know that the luxury tax threshold is going to exist like it does, right? It's likely to change by the time we get to 22. If we get to a normal 22, you know, that's, gosh, man. I mean, baseball was already not doing that great. Then you have a pandemic where it starts. They could have started their season a month earlier had they just been cooperating with each other. They decided not to do that. Ended up starting later. It takes a hit. Now we're facing ugliness going into 2022. And right now, what's amazing to me, guys, is can they not just decide if there's a goddamn DH or not? I mean, how hard is this one? I understand it's a bargaining chip that likely MLB's holding on to because that's 15 more jobs for hitters that can't play defense. All right? We all understand that. But I just don't understand why, if it's going to be a bargaining chip, then make it a bargaining chip and say we're not having a DH right now.
How much tension do you think that's causing between NL front offices and their ownership? Because you know those front offices that are saying one thing or another, just please make a decision so that we can move forward on our plans for the year.
Yeah, and it partially paralyzes them because there's a move or two they want to make that they could. You got Nelson Cruz sitting out there. That guy has 2 feet in concrete. He's not playing defense anywhere. And we saw how well he played defense in right field in the 2011 World Series, Game 6, 9th inning, which is wonderful, by the way. Any other right? He
was 9 years younger.
And he couldn't play then. You know, that guy has. If you studied his DNA, you would actually see DH inside of his DNA. It's what it would spell. But you have players like him sitting out there that just hit home runs, just hit hard, right? Just pure hitters. How many National League teams would like to know if that option's available to them in 3 or 4 months? And they don't. And so, you know, you're going to have your fourth outfielder serving that role. You're going to have, or likely you're going to have a veteran who's got questionable defense, like a la Matt Carpenter, who we don't want him at third base, you know. So if we just got rid of Colton Wong, Tommy Edman moves to second, who's going to play third base for you? If you knew you had a DH, you'd be out looking for one right now that at least had an adequate glove and could hit a little bit. So it really is. I guess it goes right into.
You say 3 or 4 months. We're actually looking at like 8 to 10 weeks here.
Yeah, well,
I mean, we've got spring training
3 months
starting
is 12 weeks. So
yeah,
forget that. We're looking at what a little over a month when pitchers and catchers are supposed to report.
Exactly,
and we don't even have a start date.
Get it together. I mean, guys, I know there's like I know for baseball, it's like it's uncertainty. We don't know how quickly vaccines are going to be distributed. We know they're going at a snail's pace right now, but I don't know. I mean, look, my office where I work already declared nobody's coming in this office until the end of March, right? And so I don't understand why baseball just doesn't draw a line somewhere. I mean, I would be okay today, guys. It would suck for us because we do a sports show that streams. And when it's not happening, we struggle, and then we start talking about stupid shit, which I'm fine doing. I'm actually happier doing that sometimes. But I would be okay, Pete, if they just said, you know what, spring training is not starting until April 1st. I would be fine if they just came out and told us that. What do you think?
Well, and they've at least established one thing, and they've said that the Major League and AAA spring trainings are going to happen, and that AA and lower won't start until after those camps have cleared out. So at least they figured that out, right, to reduce the chance of a spread. But I agree, Ron. It'd be great if we could have some definition of what this season is going to look like as far as a timeline and whether or not there's going to be a DH.
As a human people, we always know that there are unknowns in our life, but there's always knowns. I guess I can't even say taxes anymore because they might have a different due date like they did every other year. But like, just give us some known somewhere where we care about. Just tell us something. We're uncertain.
Well, Ron,
360.
There are three things that we know for certain, right? Mm-hmm. We're all going to die. Everybody who's watching this show should hit the subscribe button and also the like button. And Elliot is going to show up about 2 minutes before we go live on the show. Those are three things that we know. Everything else is a crapshoot.
Those are positives.
Oh, well, there's a fourth, and that is my son is going to ask. He's
That's right.
He doesn't ask, hey, can I be on? Which I would appreciate my own flesh and blood here. Ask me, hey, Dad, you mind if I come on? Instead, he goes on our Facebook chat and says, let me on. And he's on there. Braden, we can hear you if you want to talk. This gives us an
opportunity to speak to potential advertisers. And I'm going to look right into the camera as I make this pitch.
Oh, hold on.
We are looking for a sponsor for the Show Interruptor. So if you would like to sponsor Braden's weekly interruption of the show.
Interruption segment? Yes.
Yeah, the weekly interruption brought to you by
Greg Cody.
You can go ahead and decide if that's right for you, but
right.
We are more than welcome to provide that short ad read, and we'll have it as an opener and a closer. So it'll bookend Braden's segment, and it'll be good, right? Because people will know when Braden's segment's over when they hear your words.
Your jingle. Your jingle.
It's a win for everybody. I'm just doing everybody.
He's going right along with it.
And that's how we should live our lives.
He wasn't even offended by it. He's like, oh, yeah, get me a sponsor. What's my cut is going to be his next question, but I cut him off. Speaking of Braden.
Maybe I'll start a cameo, and then I'll make you guys say to listen to my thoughts.
All right, son. So he turns. We're going to get him off here in a second. He's turning 16 in March. But as you guys know,
Jesus.
I know, right? But as you guys know, I'm a fan of the Levitard show. I've been listening to it for years. They're no longer on ESPN, but that crew's still together. Braden has become a fan of it as well. Sometimes we're the fans of the same things our fathers are, and so his favorite character on that show, and not a character, it's a real person. His name's Greg Cody, old-timey sports writer. He coughs all the time. He has no microphone discipline. And in the world of Zoom calls, trying to do a radio show on Zoom, imagine working with a 65-year-old guy who doesn't really know technology all that well, and he just disappears from camera. He's never on cue. He misses the hard network out all the time. But he's a funny guy. But he now members of the Levitard show are appearing on Cameo. So it was a pretty reasonable price, so I thought I would catch them early before their demand starts building and the prices start going up and their queues get really long, because Greg Cody the other day called it, he has a conga line of people he's got to do a cameo for. I caught him early, and we've got Braden's, and I'll play it right now.
Hey, Braden, happy early birthday. I understand you're turning 16 in March. That's a big one. I also hear you're a Green Bay Packers fan. Congratulations for that. They're so much better than the Chicago Bears. How can anybody be a Bears fan? Back in my day, the Bears used to actually be good, but that's going way back in my day. Anyway, Braden, congratulations again. Sweet 16 coming up. Thanks for all the support. Bye-bye.
So that was Braden's cameo, one of the few that has a Greg Cody personal message. Happy early birthday. But the real birthday's coming up in a couple months. Take yourself off mute.
Speaking of which, I just wanted to share something, and I'm sure I put this up on our socials at some point, and I'll be sure to post it again at some point tonight or tomorrow or whatever. But just wanted to show everybody the first time that that Braden interrupted the show when I was staying at Ron's.
There he is.
There you go. 16
It wasn't
years
even
ago,
intentional. It was a match made in heaven.
You were born to crash the show, like every that's what he does. But I've been fortunate enough to have him out here for almost 2 weeks here recently, and he did get to sit through a Two Birds on a Bat show we did with Jim. And sometimes it's amazing. You've got your kids and they speak a certain way and they think a certain way, and all of a sudden you hear them talk and you're like, oh my God, it's an adult now. It's a little bit of a shock to the system, right, guys? We're all going to go through it. Elliot, you probably haven't quite got there yet. Pete, your kid's pretty sharp. But hearing them give a baseball take next to me, I tried my best to keep my mouth shut and not interrupt. But he made a couple pretty good points on there, and I think that that was one of those moments you look over and you're like, when did this happen? Because I used to have to build your sets for you.
Ever since the show started, just flawless take.
Oh Jesus!
My question is: did he have a shirt on during the show, and did he sit there? Doing this?
Twirl his hair? Did he have the camera pointed at the ceiling fan? I think he's got his thoughts down, and he's got those a little bit more refined. What we've got to work on with him next is just microphone and camera awareness. And you know how it is, guys. Look, we don't tout ourselves as pros at this stuff. We never ever have.
I just want to say I was not warned when I ripped one before the show started that the recording actually started. That was not clear.
It didn't actually get on the podcast, but it was on the record. Yes, he rattled one off the hardwood chair, and I'm like, it's on record, right? But
it's a good thing you brought it up on a second podcast, Braden.
I know nobody would have known that. But
well done.
Now everybody knows that. But Braden, it is 9:40 your time. You do have school tomorrow. We're going to let you go. I'm glad you got your Yadi take in there and your take on the Lindor trade. I know you're itching to do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the grind's real for baseball for me. So in Spanish class, I already made a hot take post on Instagram about it. So you want more thoughts on that instead of my 2-minute rant that I get on here.
I can't see what the name is, but Braden's segments, Tor fans demand it. Okay. I shouldn't even have read that out loud in front of him. Braden, you need to go. You need to rest up. Get your education tomorrow. We'll hear back from you.
It's the segment that Humor Rivals needs.
Yes.
And I'm happy to bring into all the people that appreciate it. So.
Pete, how we should probably solve this, and I probably shouldn't even tell him this way. The break we take between the baseball talk and then at the end the Star Wars talk, we should take about a 5-minute break.
Put him in there
and just put him in there and let him go. Just like it's like one of those toys you put the cord through and you just rip it out and it goes. Just sail him off for 5 minutes. Let him say whatever he wants, whatever's on his mind. And maybe we'll.
And then we just cut it out of the audio podcast.
I don't know. It seems like there's some people up in arms online over this. But all right, B. We love you so much, buddy. And I'll talk to you tomorrow, and then we'll talk to you on the show next week. Maybe we'll have a sponsor by then. Pete's on it.
Yeah,
Gene's on
it.
He's online.
Yeah, just tell him to leave a message if I can't get to the phone, but I'll be sure to let him know.
Okay. All right. I got my lawyer on it too to look over the contract.
Sounds good. You never know.
Okay. All right. Well. All right. So there really is no more baseball to cover, but I did want to touch briefly on the Mets up and coming. Pete, you're right. Like this guy had no impact from 2020. He comes right in, able to comes in guns a-blazing. Basically, but this is we all know this. This is like activity spending you can't do year over year. The Padres have a burst right now. To their credit, they've done it for a few more years than what we've seen them do. And my beef with San Diego has always been, one, I don't want to say wasted a career. That's very, very harsh and unfair. But one of the best pure hitters in this league that we've ever seen in our generation has been Tony Gwynn. Never experienced a World Series. A lot of losing seasons. Well, World Series
1984.
win. Did he really? Okay, so I thought Detroit won.
Yeah, he was on the Padres when they beat the Cubs, wasn't he?
Yes, but I'm talking a World Series win.
No.
So the Tigers won in '84 against the Padres.
Yeah, I know, but at least they but at least they made it.
He also played in '98.
True.
Yeah. So they played in '98. He's been to a couple, doesn't have a ring, fine. Same with Trevor Hoffman. My bigger beef with San Diego was always the year they went. It was just recently, guys, like in the last 10 years, where they went out and they got the pitcher from Tampa Bay or got him from the Royals. Can't remember, James Shields, and they went and got Matt Kemp and Craig Kimbrell. And those teams that do this kind of stuff and then pull the plug after a few months. Just nothing's more disgusting than that. Like the Marlins did that when they opened their new park in 2011, where they signed Heath.
You mean like
Bell
the Reds last year into this year?
Yeah, kind of, but at least they didn't do a fire sale in July after they just acquired everybody. Those are the teams that just annoy the hell out of me. And then the next season, they're pilfering Rule 5 people. I like they've got a microscopic window. I tell you what, you think the Major League strike zone's small to umpires? The past Padres winning window was smaller than baseball strike zone, and that's annoying as hell. You're either in or you're out. And it's amazing how they determined to do that after a couple months. But to San Diego's credit, they've now had several off seasons, fellows, where they've made some huge moves, starting with the signing of somebody like Eric Hosmer and then signing Manny Machado. They won these guys on the open market. And then this year it was the year of the deal, right? The free agent they did sign from Korea wasn't a marquee contract. It wasn't a 10-year, $300 million deal, but they got the guy that other teams were after. So I got to give them. You got to give credit where it's due, and they've seen a window and they've taken full advantage of it. And they've got a loaded team. And if you're the Dodgers, you're probably annoyed. You probably know you're still a little bit better with your veterans and your experience, but you add a couple arms like Snell and Darvish, and all of a sudden, Dodgers are starting to look more vulnerable out there in the West. That's going to be. Can we be honest here? That's going to be the game I want to watch. San Diego and LA, not St. Louis and Chicago this year. Not right now. Not the way their lineup cards are going to end up that day. I'm more interested in watching that West Coast game. I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
And the great thing is we're gonna get a lot of those games this year that we'll be able to tune into and watch.
Right. So that's it for baseball for me. If you guys are good, I'm ready to move on to our next segment. Like always, we're going to take about a 2-minute break here. Pete, you want to do the run? Let's do the rundown.
When we're not live on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope, speaking of which, Periscope ending March 31st, so you'll only be able to catch us on Facebook Live and YouTube. But anyway, you can find the Team Arrivals anywhere and everywhere. Our website is teamarrivalspodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Team Arrivals Podcast, or on Twitter at Team Arrivals Pod. Send us an email at the show at teamarrivalspodcast.com. You can find Elliot on Twitter at
TOR_Elliot.
Or you can find Ron at
TOR_Ron75.
If you're watching us live, you can also catch us anywhere you listen to podcasts, on Apple Podcasts or even Amazon Podcasts. So whether you watch us live or listen to the audio podcast, be sure to like and subscribe and leave us a comment or a review. And you can easily review the show by going to ratethispodcast.com/TOR and following the simple instructions. As always, don't forget to make your review a good one. And don't forget to check out the rest of the Gateway City Sports Network, including the Derek King Sports Show every Wednesday at 9 a.m. on Facebook Live, and 2 for 3 with Moose Michaels. You can find all that and more at gatewaycitysports.com. Ron, anything before we take our little break and come back and discuss the season finale of The Mandalorian?
No, I'm dying to hear. I'm dying for this discussion, actually. So no, I don't have any more. But no, you covered it off well, Pete. There's nothing more for me to say other than it's most years in January we go through this lull, this time where we know that we only get so excited about pitchers and catchers reporting, but at least you get to see footage, pictures, articles, and stuff written about actual baseball players being on the field and going through activities. This year is obviously different. It's the first time we've been into a January with this much uncertainty, and it kind of sucks, and it kind of takes the wind out of your sail. But we're going to have baseball this year. We just don't know when, and we don't know how long the wait's going to be. Until then, we're still going to be here talking about it. But until until it starts actually happening, you're probably going to hear more nonsense. So we hope you enjoy the nonsense. We're actually professionals at that. And so if you want to stick around, that's great, because we know we have a fair amount of Star Wars fans here, and we've got to talk about The Mandalorian Season 2, the recap of it, because it was just uber awesome, and I think that's going to be a fun segment. So until next week, we love all of you so much. We'll be back soon, like in 2 minutes. Bye-bye, everyone. Hope everybody enjoyed the sound of Elliot's microphone bass and the clearing of the throat while we're on that break. I took him off mute. I shouldn't have done it. I knew he wouldn't.
Hey,
I knew
Elliot
he
is
would.
just auditioning for a role on the Lebitard show.
That's right.
And you were talking about lack of microphone discipline.
I know. I know he does. He feels that quite well.
I just want to say, it's a new year. Need to turn over a new leaf. Elliot, I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I really do appreciate your good nature and your humor and your willingness to take shit from Ron and I every single week.
I wouldn't,
because this show would not be what it was if you were sitting there getting pissed off.
And we certainly know several folks, Pete, that would be so thin-skinned about that. But Elliot, I actually don't want you to try to put yourself on mute. I actually want you to forget more often. I want those beers opening right in front of the microphone, not even turning your back and trying to muffle it a little bit. I want it right there, front and center. That's perfectly fine with me. Guys, this is the part of the show that usually the viewers drop off like flies, and they have. But I don't care. This is really the thing I've been most anxious to talk to both of you about, and that is how the Mandalorian season ended. We don't have to recap the whole season. It's actually been a pretty good one, right? With some big reveals, major. I can't even really say plot twists, but it's like things we thought we were going to see, and then we saw them, and they executed them so well. And then going into this last one, the big question on this last one: who was going to be there? Who was going to show up? And so usually I try to walk through the episode. It ends up usually being kind of boring. But I will kind of walk through this one because there's not a lot of boring stuff in this episode.
Oh.
As we know that the opening scene was, Boba Fett, Slave One, chasing down this Imperial shuttle. things that we had those toys when we were kids. We knew what those two things were. We never saw those two things together. Then we see these two things together. Slave One chasing down a shuttle. Pretty fantastic, right? And I actually didn't know that Slave One was armed with ion cannons. I thought Slave One was more, well, I guess he's a bounty hunter. He's got to disable things, right? And take his bounty. I expected just nothing but kill weapons on Slave One. But anyway, interesting scene and speaking about just Slave One was all the things we got to learn about Slave One, like seeing when the Slave One takes off and it rotates, how a certain section of the ship rotates with it, so you're always oriented in the right way. We could see the walls moving in the background as those characters were sitting in their seats. Really kind of cool, man. I mean, I imagine Hasbro's already working on that model to cash in some more money on the one that actually is right on the inside. We've never seen the innards of Slave One. I thought it's been really, really cool, even to see Boba Fett in the cockpit. New paint job.
Yeah, too. Especially when you consider that they just had the HasLab project for the Mandalorian ship, and it doesn't exist anymore. So that was money well spent by everybody who funded that project. So yeah, no, I agree, Ron. I think the fully functional Slave One has to be next on their construction list.
I think the Slave One is second only to the Millennium Falcon, right? I mean, that thing's been around for a really long time. And the Millennium Falcon actually might be younger than Slave One because we saw the Millennium Falcon, fairly brand new ship in the movie Solo, which was well past Attack of the Clones, right? And so it could have been it might be older. And
well, yeah, because we first saw not first saw, but the first instance of seeing Slave One in the trilogy was on Kamino. So
the prequel trilogy, yeah, it was on Kamino, Attack of the Clones, right? Yeah.
Still one of my favorite sound edits that I have ever seen committed to film. The firing of those, what were they? Proton bombs, neutron bombs, whatever it was, where the theater went completely silent.
Yes.
And then you heard that.
By the way, amazing. You say that, and that's the only part of The Last Jedi I like is the hyperspace right into Snoke's major ship. I mean, it was a repeat of the same thing where it was silence at first, and then you heard the noise after. And yeah, you're right, Pete. That is a great sound, and we saw that from Slave One in The Mandalorian Season 2 when he took out 2 TIE fighters with one of those. It almost reminded me of like depth charges that a submarine would just jettison behind it. And so, yeah, that is a great sound. Another good sound is just hearing the engines on Slave One is a pretty good thing too. But that was a pretty cool scene. Of course, they take the scientist, and I forgot his name already, but they take him hostage, kidnap him, I guess. And then there's a showdown a little bit in that cockpit of the shuttle. What I thought was really cool about the shuttle is when it was disabled, and you hear Boba Fett just basically telling him, prepare to be boarded, lower your shields, and you see Slave One go right up in front of the cockpit window. It's right over it, right? From the angle or the view from the Imperial pilot sitting, looking out that Imperial shuttle window, you see Slave One just come up over it. So you get more of a sense of scale and just kind of a menacing thing. But I thought another thing that they use is that obviously the volume's bigger in Season 2 that they were using, but damn, I mean, as an actor being able to actually see that, I mean, how great is that if you're an actor? You can actually see it.
Yeah,
I concur.
This is why we don't do the audio version of this one, except at the end of the year. That was a pretty cool scene. Of course, they come in and they take the guy. There's a little bit of a standoff too between Cara Dune with the rebel insignia tattoo, signifying that she's from Alderaan, right? It's a tear.
Right, and then you had the guy who was like, I was on the second Death Star, or I was on the Death Star when they blew up your planet.
And her response was, which one?
She said, yeah, which one, which was kind of a back and forth. She ended up offing this guy pretty easy. I expected that. I expected they're going to move on past this part of the show. There's a lot to get to, right? So they moved off from that quick, but I thought, boy, the way this opens, probably one of my favorite openings of any episode of The Mandalorian, honestly, besides the Ahsoka episode, which they got right into. But this is a pretty cool way to start it off. I was happy to see Bo-Katan back too. and there's a little bit of scuffle and a fight scene between Boba Fett and I can't remember the other character, Sasha Banks' character.
It's the WWE star Sasha
Banks.
Yeah,
I don't know what the character's called, but I thought that was pretty WWF, I guess, looking the way she ran up on the wall with her jetpack, but that was a good scuffle, you know.
And actually, one of my favorite parts of that scene is when Bo-Katan says, "I've heard your voice 1,000 times,"
and I like his reply where it might be the last time you hear this voice. Yeah. So, what did you think of all that, Pete? I mean, just opening scene and then into this. I don't know what the location was. I know you were sending pictures back and forth. Is that the Ghost Park next to there? And I think we debunked it the more we zoomed into it. But what did you think of just the whole way this one opened? Did anything besides what you've said already? Did anything about that opening scene in that bar, cantina, whatever you want to call it? Cool, not cool.
I don't
didn't care.
I honestly don't think that they missed a note in this entire episode. I think it was beautifully paced. I think that Jon Favreau is such a good storyteller. And I contrast what he has done with this with what you see, that have happened in other, not even in the Star Wars franchise. It took, 9 years for Disney finally to get it right when it came to Star Wars. And that's because they put the story in the hands of a storyteller and not in the hands of a studio exec. And Jon Favreau knows how to tell a story. I mean, he demonstrated it when he took, and I heard I had never heard this one before. But the anecdote that I heard of when Favreau took over Iron Man, and apparently they were struggling with the script and it was kind of a piece of shit. And he took a look at the script and he said, "What's this story about?" They're like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "What's this story about?" He said, "The story is about a guy who has no heart and he loses his heart. He gets an artificial heart. And that's when he actually gains his heart." He said, "That's your story." And all of a sudden, Iron Man completely revitalized the entire MCU.
Yeah.
And it feels like to me, he's done the same thing with The Mandalorian and with Star Wars if Disney trusts him. And it certainly would seem like after 2 seasons that they do. So I think you got to put this guy in charge of the whole thing so that he can dip in on every story and say exactly that. What is this story about?
Well, it is amazing.
Stop worrying about the special effects and all of that stuff. What's the story about?
Yeah, you can only ride on the coattails of that legacy for so long before you start screwing it up. And I think they, at least to Disney's credit, I think they have recognized that, Pete. And I think that's why we will see a pivot to what they're going to create. But, it is an interesting thing you bring up about Iron Man, because I had an awareness of Iron Man before Iron Man Marvel Cinematic Universe became a thing. I really didn't care about that character too much. It really wasn't cool to me. I never had an Iron Man figure or a comic book. I mean, I'm just speaking for me. Like, I didn't know enough about it, and it wasn't that appealing to me until the movie came out and that story was told. And then, oh shit, this is actually a pretty cool character. And now it's like an iconic character. Like, everybody knows about Iron Man. Every little kid, every adult at this point has seen that movie. So, just to me, before Iron Man Marvel Cinematic Universe became a thing, I didn't really know much about it, and I didn't care too much.
Well, and I'm sure that Elliot, you can back me up on this, and then you can launch because you're the Marvel expert here. With the exception of Captain America, Spider-Man, and the Hulk, Marvel Cinematic Universe is populated with a bunch of B or worse level superheroes. These are not recognizable superheroes like Superman and Batman.
Right.
And when you look at Thor and Iron Man and Hawkeye and Black Widow, these are not immediately recognizable names, but I can pull them directly from memory now because of what they've done with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. And that's what's kind of cool about seeing some of those things. And it reminds me of kind of like Lord of the Rings, right? When the movie came out, I kind of knew a little bit about it. I think I had seen a Hobbit cartoon or some animated version of it. And
Ralph Bakshi, yeah.
And when I saw the movie, then it started recalling all these things I kind of knew a little bit about. And do you want to add them to the show, Elliot? We can get them on.
Yeah.
Is that Braden calling you now? But
no, it's Scott.
It's Scott.
Scott's Marvel sense went off.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's more likely.
Somebody somewhere is talking about Marvel on a podcast I must call.
I must get my thought in the middle of this. But yeah, I mean, sometimes when I see things like that and have a little bit of awareness, it's still kind of cool because I kind of know. But I'm going to get to see I'm going to get to learn more about something that I know a little bit about. But now they're making it really interesting. That's how Iron Man hit me. So look, he took a character. You're right, Pete. And that's how it always felt to me. Kind of like one of these. It was almost like a role player on a baseball team. Don't know much about him. You acquire them right before the playoffs. They become an integral role. Scott Spezio, 2006. I could go to that example, and all of a sudden, they're a hero. So he did a great job with that story. If what you told me, if that's the account of it, then I agree. Well,
the funny thing is when after they shot the movie and they went to go show it to test audiences, Disney. Marvel weren't sure what they had, and after the first showing of Iron Man to a test audience, they went back to Favreau and said, "You need to do a post-credit scene. You need to let people know that this is going to continue on." And then after the movie was done, they went and shot the post-credit scene to set up for Iron Man 2.
Well, and they love that so much. They love their own idea so much. It trickled into this now, which is new to Star Wars, and we won't get to it right now. I don't want to jump the gun.
Before we get to it, actually, I just want to wrap up the whole Favreau post because I was just thinking about it, and it kind of ties in. Think about it. Took an ancillary character or a character that most people weren't very aware of at all, told their story, made it compelling, and then brought in some more recognizable characters as the story developed, and grew it into a franchise. I mean, are we talking about Marvel or are we talking about The Mandalorian?
Yeah, and I think by those efforts, Pete, I would argue at this point that Iron Man has become the most popular of those characters when he wasn't before that. It was always, when you thought of Marvel, you did think of Captain America. That's the first name you think of. When you think of Avengers, that is the first name you think of. That's the head honcho, so to speak. That's the quarterback of the Avengers. You think of Captain America. And in many ways, the way it ended, he might have been. But I think the face of that franchise, it's Robert Downey Jr. and Tony Stark. That's the quarterback, right? That's the way it feels to me. Okay, we're not here to talk about
concur.
Marvel. Yeah, okay. So we're not here to talk about Marvel, but I think that's a great. I don't mind talking about it because it has everything to do with Jon Favreau and his abilities and his talent and his the way he can tell a story. And I'm happy as hell that he's telling this one alongside a Star Wars aficionado in Dave Filoni. This thing was maybe the most perfectly executed 40-some minutes or 36-some minutes of Star Wars footage that I maybe have ever seen, and I've really liked some of the other stuff that Filoni's done, but I don't think anything tops this one. I love that
Season 7 of Clone Wars, the last 4 episodes was pretty damn good.
The Siege of Mandalore arc.
That was pretty damn good. But I love too that they don't debunk and ignore things that happen from the expanded universe. And I'm going into this episode, of course, I'm talking about the Dark Troopers. That was something that was early on in a PC game.
Mm-hmm.
Where
a great PC game.
It was a really fun PC game.
That was loads of fun, man.
Yeah, a lot of those old ones were. And, the Dark Troopers were a thing. Their spin on these, I thought was pretty cool. Now, they're designed with some flaws. It's amazing that they're in Phase 3, but they can have their heads twisted off. But whatever. They're no longer any human element to them. But I really thought the only thing that kind of like, oh, okay, it wasn't that. And I say it wasn't that in quotes because I thought something with the blood of Grogu or some kind of genetic thing they were testing was for the purpose of the Dark Troopers. It was Gideon going after the child to get the DNA, blood, whatever it was. I thought it was for the purpose of fueling the Dark Troopers because they were part still living. That wasn't the case. So I was a little bit surprised that wasn't it.
Well, I think it goes back though to something that we discussed early on in season 1, and that was the possibility that Grogu was going to somehow tie into the Emperor, and I think that's been made explicitly clear in these last 3 or 4 episodes. Is that's why he wants Grogu?
Yeah, I agree. I don't see any other reason why it wouldn't be other than to create this thing called Snoke that actually has Force ability. It's one of the two.
I tell you, Ron, this is how well they executed the Dark Troopers. Both my dad and my son, neither of whom had any awareness of the Dark Troopers prior to this arc of the Mandalorian, are both still talking about the Dark Troopers and how intimidating they were and what a great addition to the story arc they are. So, I mean, I think that's a great testament to the great way that they have brought a lot of the expanded universe stuff into the Mandalorian.
Yeah, and you know what? The vehicle they made them intimidating was so hard for Mando to even take out one of them. Right. By the time you got to the hatches, and by the way, we've skipped a bunch of parts, but that's fine because there's really nothing to tell other than I got to tell you the way they entered the ship with the fake chase with Slave One, firing shots at the shuttle. That was great. That was really good. I do think though, if the story could be told from the character's point of view, I think Gideon probably caught on to it earlier. He kind of knew. I feel like he kind of knew. Yeah. That this is the rescue attempt right here.
Well, and that's why he left and he was where everybody was at up front of the ship in the control room, and he went back to the cell area because even Bo-Katan was. I mean, that's why she went up to the control room because that's where she thought Gideon was because she knew that she had to defeat him in combat.
Yeah, and Mando telegraphed that past the previous episode where he sent him a message saying you don't understand what you have, and
quoting directly
from him.
The message that Gideon sent him earlier in the season.
You have no idea.
You think you know what you have.
You have no idea what that child means to me. Like that kind of thing. Yep. Yeah. So he telegraphed the pass. So I think Gideon full well knew that ship could probably shoot that shuttle down. It's not shooting it down. I know who it is. And so, I'm making my move. But the way they entered, the way that I think the characters were working together to work their way through the ship to take out every stormtrooper imaginable. Yes, that's probably some of the best gunfighting. Stormtroopers still can't hit shit for some reason, but I think that's Elliot, that's a thing like that we like about you. You're gonna make sounds in front of the microphone. Stormtroopers aren't gonna hit anything. I think that's a thing that Star Wars fans expect and love now. And
absolutely.
So you can, walk with a band of 4 against 60 stormtroopers, and you can just gun them all down, and they're never going to hit you. You're not even going to get close. But so anyway, so as they work their way through the ship, that was a really cool scene. But getting back to the Mando facing the Dark Trooper, that's when I think they made the Dark Trooper seem menacing, is because it was so hard for him. We'd seen him take out people easily. Through almost 2 full seasons, take out people relatively easily, except for the Mudhorn. He's had a really easy time. This one, if he did not have that Beskar spear, he was effed. Like he wasn't going to be able to get it done. And so not only was it hard for him to take out one, there were like 24 more behind the door that was shut. I didn't believe for 1 second when he ejected them into space that they were gone forever. Well expected them to be back, but I'll kick it over to you guys.
Well, that's part of the removing the human element from the Dark Troopers is that they could survive in space because they are all machine. So, I mean, I think they showed that. I think they showed the menacing part just in that battle scene where, I mean, the punches to the Beskar helmet where it was pushing his head into the wall, to him trying to use the fire to blow all the way up into it, and they made it seem like the robot was annoyed or angry by that. So it was pretty awesome, and until he stuck that Beskar spear into the neck and was able to actually break some stuff, you thought he was going down or was going to be seriously injured or something during this, or he was going to need to be saved by somebody else.
Anyway, I think we're all, I agree, Elliot, but I think, Pete, to your point earlier, I love the way they executed this element of an expanded universe thing and brought it into this. Because even people that never touched that game, none of my children even know that exists because it's too old-timey, it's too pixelated of a video game. It would never pass for a video game for them these days, but they love that character. Going on to the cell scene.
I got it. Well,
yeah.
Before you move on, I just want to say, and you're right. we knew that if you stopped for even a moment, you knew that the Dark Troopers were coming back. But credit to Peyton Reed's filmmaking abilities, that he kept the action moving in it. Because if you think about it, in the script, I guarantee you there was not more than half a page dedicated to that entire Dark Trooper segment, right? Because there's no dialogue. So all that was in there was probably one of the Dark Troopers makes it out. The Mandalorian manages to close the door and pulls the lever to eject the Dark Troopers. Peyton Reed did a great job by not dwelling on their ejection, right? And instead focusing on the action that was happening in the ship, both the fight between Din and the remaining Dark Trooper, and then also what was going on in the rest of the ship at the command post, right? So we knew they were coming back because it had already been demonstrated to us that they have the ability to fly. And we know that they're robots, right? But by not dwelling on the fact that they were no longer on the ship, we didn't have a minute to think about, when are they coming back, right? You kept the action moving so that when they did come back, it was like, oh shit, I forgot about that. And it was a surprise. But you only get that by being a good director and by paying attention to your craft. So, hats off to Peyton Reed on that one, on keeping the action moving forward. And that was true of this entire episode. It just kept on moving.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I love directors that can see what they think people are going to see and what they're going to expect and deliver on it, right? So the whole cell scene where Mando actually shows up at the cell to rescue Grogu. Yes, Gideon's there. He has the blade out. There's nothing I didn't like about this episode. I like this part. It was necessary. The dialogue between the two. But this is obviously washed out or overshadowed by other things that have happened in this episode. So I don't want to dwell on this part so much, but for 1 second they had me where I thought Gideon was just going to say, hey, let me keep this and you can go on your way. Right. I kind of thought that, oh shit, all he really cares about is just keeping this. He's already got everything he needs from the child, all the blood he needs without killing him. And you take him, just let me keep this and we're good. I think Mando bought it, which is kind of been a theme for Mando. I think he trusts people sometimes too much. And of course, as soon as he turns his back on him, he goes to attack him with it. But of course, the blade meets the Beskar, and sparks fly, and of course, the big fight happens. I got to give credit to Giancarlo Esposito. If that's him in most of those scenes, he's got pretty good sword work. But I didn't even want to get into the part where, oh yes, the sword touched the Beskar spear and it started getting hot and red. I'm like, okay, well, I would expect that to happen against something that produces a lot of heat against metal. That's really not that fascinating, but okay, we see what happens, right? We know a lightsaber cannot cut through pure Beskar, but if it touches it long enough, it gets hot and melty. Okay, like a Philly cheesesteak. We get it. That's fine. There's nothing. I think this episode had so many good things in it. Like that whole fight scene between Mando and Moff Gideon wasn't really a thing that. It was cool, but okay. I want to rush to get to the end.
Yeah, so let's do that. Let's just jump to it.
Yeah, I think so.
When did you know it was Luke? Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. If you haven't watched it already, fuck off.
The X-Wing.
When did you guys figure out it was Luke?
Elliot said
honestly
when the X-Wing showed up.
Well, so the X-Wing, I'm like, okay.
No. Not when did you say this could be Luke? When did you say this? It's Luke. When did you freak out in your
green lightsaber? It's the green lightsaber. I mean, as soon as you saw it was green, and then you see the gloved hand, you're like, they're doing it. They are doing it. And it was chills and like all that kid emotion. And then I thought back to Rogue One when Vader was standing in the hallway with his lightsaber and
there were shadows of that.
There were echoes of that. Yep.
That was definitely some conscious filmmaking in the shooting of that scene. There were echoes of Vader tearing up that hallway.
Right. Well, and you had to think that Moff Gideon had an idea of who this was because he got scared.
Well, and the fact that the Dark Troopers, right? There's clearly some programming in there that they seek out either the greatest threat or they seek out any Jedi, because as soon as he landed, they all shifted their focus.
Yes.
How about you, Ron? When did you know it was Luke? Not when did you suspect? When did you say shit?
Pete, I'm circumspect on most things, right? So I saw the single X-wing, right, on the thing beeped in the thing, and then we saw the X-wing kind of fly across the windows of the cockpit of the light cruiser, and I was kind of thinking, just for a second, I imagined that out of that cockpit came Dave Filoni's X-pilot. X-wing pilot.
Hey guys, can I help?
Where he it opens up and he's like, "Oh God, what's this? Is this an abandoned light cruiser or something? Just what's going on here, Astromech? You just stay there. I'm just gonna go walk around." And he walks about.
He drops his blaster and he
down off
shoots
the
all
ladder.
the Dark Troopers.
He gets down off the ladder and he sees, oh, these are stormtroopers. Oh, oh shit, these are robots. I'm gonna go. And when I get back in, and he's just the X-wing, you're going to see the X-wing backing out, and then all of a sudden, the Mando's over because they just killed everybody in the. No. For a second though, I thought, oh, it's one of these two X-wing pilots we've seen reoccur on the Mandalorian. I'm like, might be one of them, and then a fleet's going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of thinking that might be what happens here, and we won't see the Jedi. And I thought they would maybe drag that out to the cliffhanger. That would be the cliffhanger. The Jedi actually doesn't show up that Grogu was communicating with on the rock. That the New Republic force would show up and drive off. The Dark Troopers would be distracted. They would exit. They would walk away and go to fight or defend the ship from New Republic forces, and that would be the end of it. I really thought that's what was going to happen. When we saw the Grogu looking through the little monitors that was showing what was happening, where you saw a hooded figure walk out. I'm like, is this... Ahsoka never had an X-Wing.
Mm-mm.
No.
Yoda, when he passed away, he said, the last of the Jedi you will be. And I firmly believe at the end of Return of the Jedi that he is the last one, and Luke's going to be the next last one, right? So I'm like, certainly they're not going to bring some character back, another Jedi that Yoda just couldn't sense or missed. I'm like, we got to be past that. Like, oh, there's always one that survived. So, and then for a fraction of a second, I went to this. This can't be this Mace Windu theory, right? This would be stupid. It's got to be only one person. When I started processing all this and then continue to watch the little video, clips that they're showing on a monitor, so you don't see the lightsaber color, it is one. Right. It's not two, by the way, so I immediately ruled out that it's Ahsoka. I'm like, are they really going to do this? Are they doing this? Because I thought the fear would always be that bringing in a character like that would overshadow and trump what's going on in the show. Like, are they really doing this? I remember looking over at my 9-year-old, Sam, who's seen all the movies, and he looks at me, he's like, is that Luke? I'm like, I don't know if I want it to be or if I don't want it to be. And we saw it, and Elliot, my point of acceptance was the same as yours. When I saw the actual lightsaber color, I'm like, it's him. I mean, it's him. There's what do they bring, Qui-Gon back, or
right?
I don't know who else had a green one, like Plo Koon. I'm pretty sure we saw him die in his ship at the end of Revenge of the Sith. So I'm pretty sure this is it now. How are they going to do this? Then my mind went to like, well, this is really cool. All of a sudden, we saw Luke fighting a lot like we saw the prequel trilogy Jedi Knights fighting, deflecting stuff. Really cool lightsaber moves, and you got to figure this is Luke 5 or 6 years after Return of the Jedi. He's learned a lot at this point. Yeah. Deflecting laser blasts, not just from a scout trooper on a speeder, but like actually deflecting laser blasts that are really close to him. And so as this kept going, I'm like, and then yes, saw the glove. I'm like, well, that is what it is. Now my mind went to, how are they going to do this and make this authentic, right, to where we believe it? That's where I that was a point of recognition. Yes, the black glove on the right hand, green saber. We couldn't really see the hilt because it was moving. Yeah, I'm like, this is naturally what they have to do. He is the last Jedi. The last of the Jedi you will be is what Yoda told him at the end of Return of the Jedi. So do the math.
Yep. I had the same reaction. I don't remember exactly what the timeline was, but whichever one was revealed first, whether it was the color of the lightsaber or the gloved hand, that was when I knew that it was Luke. And I agree with you, Ron. It was clear that we were being shown Luke Skywalker at the height of his powers, but still not having entirely controlled his dark side tendencies. We'd never seen Luke fight using the Force at the same time that he was using a lightsaber. Mm-hmm. But when he did, again, harkening back to what Elliot said, there were shades of Darth Vader in the hallway in Rogue One. Pulling those dark troopers in, pulling them in closer with the Force, and then using the lightsaber to finish them off. So, and once again, if there's one quibble with the episode, it's not unique to this episode, but it's the uncanny valley. Even though they used Mark Hamill and they used his voice and they used his face and everything and they de-aged him, still it didn't look quite right. It was better than Leia. I don't think it was as good as Tarkin. But I mean, and I would imagine that at some point, as the technology gets better, they'll go back and they'll fix it.
Yeah, sure. And that's what I was thinking too. That's what I was thinking too, Pete. Is like as things get better, like when they did the 1997 special edition of Jabba, years later they actually did another version of it, and that's what you see now. If you bought it later or you own it on something like iTunes, you see all the more recent edits, and I clearly think that's what'll happen. And he revealed his face. First of all, the final nail in the coffin is when you saw him put the lightsaber on his hilt. When he buckled it up, you saw the hilt, and you're like, that's Luke's Return of the Jedi saber. Did he recall that before he went and drug his father down to the shuttle before he exited the second Death Star before it blew up? I mean, we always knew he threw. Last time we saw that hilt, he tossed it.
Right.
But no, that's not right. We saw it in Last Jedi when he raised it against Ben Solo.
That's true.
But chronologically.
Right.
And when he raised it against Ben Solo, remember, it was a vision.
It was a vision. Yeah, correct. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. When he put it back on his hilt, I'm like, and I saw the buckle. The buckle is the same buckle on the black suit that he was wearing in Return of the Jedi. I'm like, shit, this is him. And my little kid's over here going, he's freaking out, like his hands touching my arm. He's like, is this it? Is this it? I'm like, yeah, Sam, don't talk to me. This is more of a legacy for me. Get the hell away from me. You've only known this for a few years. You don't touch me. And yeah, we saw it, and I'm like, at first, I'm like, Pete, I didn't know if it was CGI or not. I didn't know if it was a stand-in actor. Like they talk about that guy that played Bucky on
Sebastian Stan.
Right. I didn't know if it was him that they had come in or what. But obviously, when you saw the face start talking and moving, you knew it was CGI. They did a really good job on the voice because it didn't sound like a gruff, older Mark Hamill.
Because it was Mark Hamill.
It was Mark Hamill.
It was, but still, even if he's trying to sound young, like he's going to have
but I let's not sell him short, right? This is the guy who's done the voice of the Joker. He has a facility with his voice that he's discovered in the second act of his career.
I agree.
It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't have to do much audio processing at all.
But I think they did some because he's done something recently of a younger Luke, and I can't recall what it is, that you could tell it was not Mark Hamill 1980 or 1977 or 83 voice. They had to do something.
But it doesn't have to be 1983 voice. 1988 will suffice. Because remember, this is 5-6 years on. This isn't immediately after Return of the Jedi.
No, you're absolutely right. I don't like to admit when you're right. Is there anything, we should put this as a poll question as well on our feed. Is there anything more that Pete likes than being right?
Well, we don't need that as a poll question because obviously the answer is no.
Okay. Looking for something over here, but yeah. So I don't know when I saw who it was, we all heard the dialogue. It was like I was still stuck in a spot where I'm like, are they really doing this? And I couldn't actually process what was taking place. I couldn't. It was really hard. I'm like, are they really bringing Luke Skywalker into a streaming show? That was where I was stuck at. I'm like, is this happening? I love what I'm seeing. I love it. I'm seeing the Luke I've always wanted to see. But I don't think it was an FU to the sequel trilogy. I really don't. I don't think that's the way Favreau thinks. You know, I don't think they did.
Well, I don't know. Let's see what happens. Who knows? Maybe we get a reboot.
Maybe, but
they rebooted Marvel after with Iron Man. All the previous Marvel movies basically got thrown out the window.
I mean, you might be right, but you know, I'm still kind of like,
Ooh, sir.
That's the Mark Hamill voice that I'm like thinking that would have showed up. Little bit gravelly, a little older. I don't know. I just saw here we are seeing the character that, you know, most of us relate to and grew up being a fanboy of, and he's back on screen right now. I was having you guys probably pick it up from my conversation right now. I was having a really hard time processing all of it. Yep. Like, is this really happening?
So did you watch it all the way through? Did you guys watch it all the way through to the credit through the credits on the first viewing, or did you have to be told to?
I had to be told to from Braden.
Yeah, I had to tell my dad. He watched it through and we were talking about it. And I said, what'd you think about the ending? And he said, it was great. And it was clear that he was talking about Luke. And I said, no, the end. He was like, what are you talking about? I said, watch all the way through to the end. And he texted me like an hour and a half later and he said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, Luke, I said, Dad, when did you stop watching it? Well, I mean, at the credits. You got to watch all the way through to the end of the credits. And then about an hour and a half later, what just happened?
Well, let me ask you this, guys. You see Luke Skywalker back on screen. Yes, we know it's CGI. It's you know, they made Robert Downey Jr. look younger when there was a flashback when his father was still alive when he was Iron Man, right? Not Iron Man, but he was Tony Stark. The more I watched this episode, and it literally took me 2 or 3 times watching this to where I'm like, they actually did a pretty decent job. They got the chin dimple. They did, you know, his voice did resonate. I mean, it was really Luke's voice. And so, but what really got me, and this brings me a lot of joy, and I mean this. My daughter has an awareness of Star Wars because of her brothers, because of me. The point in time where I looked over at her on one of the couches she was sitting on watching this, and the whole family was watching this. Sam and I had watched it earlier in the morning, and the rest of the family, all 5 of us, watched it later in the evening on a Friday. And when R2-D2 showed up on picture, I looked over at my daughter, and she was just smiling and giggling, because she knows it's a cute thing to her. But it's just one of those things that kids relate to Star Wars, something you loved, and they show that one point of contact, that one connection that you're familiar with, but they're not, but they kind of like get it. And I think that was a really cool thing. I loved that. I love that she loves that droid. Didn't know it was going to show up. But obviously on my second viewing I did, but I was just waiting for her to react to that part because she loves those types of things. So. It was a great episode for many reasons, not just because I enjoyed it. I looked at my family watching it, including my wife. When Luke showed up, it was, first of all, it was a skeptical look, like, what? You know, kind of this, what? Like, is this happening? You know, and I was like, yeah, that's how I felt the first time. But I don't know. It was a great episode.
So is it just me, or was R2-D2's excitement there at the end because he recognized Grogu?
Yeah, that's
because
a huge debate. Go ahead, Elliot.
He was there during this time. So, I mean, Grogu was around at the Jedi Temple where Anakin killed all the younglings. And, was R2 a part of saving Grogu? We don't know.
I don't think so. Because R2 was on Mustafar, wasn't he?
No, he traveled with Anakin and his starfighter to Mustafar.
Right. But
okay,
that's what I mean. He would not have been. Oh no, you're right. He did.
Yeah. So in theory, yes, Pete. Maybe he could have. That could have been a chance, or he could have known Grogu from his time at the temple with Anakin and all the Jedi.
Right, but I don't know that he would have been able to have helped Grogu escape if he traveled with Anakin to Mustafar.
Oh, yeah. Well, we know the
timeline would have been really tight.
Yeah. But
yeah, I think I agree, Elliot. I think that his excitement was. I think he was trying to communicate to Luke because obviously Luke didn't know Grogu. But I think that was R2's because we know it's for a fact R2 has never had his memory wiped.
No.
So I think he was communicating to Luke. I know who this little one is. I encountered him on the temple and he survived your father's slaughter of the Jedi.
Or he never did, but he recognized the same species as Master Yoda, which R2 definitely knew of.
It obviously could be that too.
And that's part of canon because R2 traveled with Yoda on his journey to.
Well, and R2 saw Yoda on Dagobah.
He saw him on Dagobah, but he also, which is interesting. Which is interesting. You think of the Clone Wars when he traveled with Yoda in that Lost Missions season 6, where he traveled with Yoda to Korriban or Moraban or whatever they call it, the Sith planet. And it really is. And I just wonder if he's never had his memory wipe. What was that exchange in The Empire Strikes Back when he went up to R2 and was hitting him with the stick and saying, mine. Like, did R2 get it? And they're like, okay, we're putting on an act here because I can't show my master that I know this guy. Just getting in the mind of R2 might be the most interesting Star Wars story to ever be told. I don't know how many people would buy a book about that, but that would be an interesting story. Like, yes, that's Master Yoda. I'm happy as hell. I have to fake it.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you were to ask him, Anthony Daniels would argue that the most interesting mind to get into is C-3PO's because Anthony Daniels loves himself some Anthony Daniels.
Oh, yeah, he does. He does. Guys, let's fast forward to the end here because the ending scene was great to this episode. I mean, it touched us all, but the end credits, I didn't see them the first time. In fact, the Show Infiltrator said, "Watch all the credits, boomer." I'm like, okay. I watched it and I saw it and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I was, naturally, I think a lot of us after a couple of viewings, we didn't notice because we were so shocked and thrilled that Luke Skywalker was back. We saw a version of him we always wanted to. But Boba Fett flew off into hyperspace before any of this shit happened. So where did he go? What happens? And
but he obviously came back because he had to pick up Fennec.
Yeah, you're right. And so the end credits were interesting. I don't know what his motivation was to. It'd be interesting to see in this Boba Fett series, revenge. But what did Jabba really do to him? He employed him, but it wasn't his fault.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't revenge on Jabba. It was clearly revenge on. Bib Fortuna, because you would imagine that Bib. It's two things, right? Bib probably had heard that he may have survived, but also why not take the opportunity to take over a crime syndicate when there's somebody as weak on the throne as Bib Fortuna?
Yeah, I guess that's right. But what we've seen of Boba is this. He's true to his word. He is a he does abide by some of the Mandalorian code where when he gives his promise, he keeps it. To go back to a crime syndicate, fine. I think it's a great story. I'm looking forward to watching it. But I love how Bib got overweight. I mean, Bib was on COVID lockdown and gained all this weight. And so that's funny in itself, really. I mean, he's just like most of us. But It was great to see how they recreated the inside of the palace. We saw that if you watch the gallery episode, they recreated the whole thing. I mean, it looked authentic. It looked great. New throne on top of the dais there, but
same dais.
Same dais. I mean, everything was looked pretty damn good. Even the little chime over the steps
downstairs.
Stuff was there. So they didn't ignore any detail. Really fun way to introduce that new series, though, because we got a taste of Boba Fett.
And the crazy thing is we get Book of Boba before we get Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah,
correct.
And I like the name of that. I really like the name of it.
Yeah. And also, the unannounced surprise for us from that investor call is that there was actually a 10th series that they just didn't mention. So we're not getting 10 Star Wars vehicles. We're getting 11 over the next couple of years. Yeah. I thought it was interesting too that they called it Book of Boba, and I'm glad that they clarified it, because my initial reaction as I was watching it was, oh, we're going to take a break from the Mandalorian now, or we're going to take a break from the Din Djarin, the Book of Din Mandalorian story, right? That this was going to be the Mandalorian, and it was going to be a series of books about Mandalorians. And so the first book was 10 chapters, which is how they were titled, that focused on Din Djarin, and that the second book was going to be about Boba Fett, and we were going to get 2 series of that, and then we were going to get, who was going to be the next one? Was it going to be Bo-Katan? Was it going to be, who knows? Yeah. Was it going to be the Armorer? Right. Yeah. But I'm glad though that they did clarify it, that no, the Mandalorian is going to continue. It's going to have its own season, and that Boba Fett will have his own series. I think that's going to be exciting.
Yep. He'll have his own spotlight, own time. I mean, this has always been a character we've shrouded in mystery because we only had so much screen time from him. And Tim Morris is an actor. When they showed Boba Fett unmasked, just kicking ass there on that planet where Grogu was abducted, before he decided, oh, my armor's sitting on that ship, I'm just going to take it.
Right.
It really brings, I think, another level of depth to the character that I didn't necessarily ask for, but I'm glad I got.
And I love that. And you mentioned the gallery. I loved the interview that they did with Tim Morrison, and how he said that he brought some of his Maori roots into Boba Fett's combat style. That he brought in elements of the haka into the way that Boba fought, and I love the fact that he specially requested a gaffy stick so that he could fight with it. That was awesome.
Well, he was marooned on Tatooine for quite a while, and had to learn that style and perhaps acquire a piece or two. So, this is I think it was a really good ending. And what sucks about these things is we got to wait almost a whole year, to pick it back up. But what a
I got to tell you, I was a little nervous the last couple of days. I don't know, have either of you guys seen Wonder Woman 84?
No, I have not.
I have.
I haven't. I'm a little scared now for Rogue Squadron, because the reviews on Wonder Woman 84 have not been kind, and that's the same director of Rogue Squadron. So I'm a little. I'll admit right now, a little bit nervous.
Well, in true Lucasfilm form, if Kathleen Kennedy's still over it, if the negative reviews are happening on Wonder Woman 84, this will be yet another director that leaves the project. You know what I mean? It's just one. That's how they do it. But yeah, I saw it, Pete. It's you've got to get some motivation to get all the way through it. It's
what, 2.5 hours long.
It's just, we watched it here,
and it's a mess, right?
It's a mess.
I heard there's it goes almost an hour between when you see Wonder Woman. The whole time. I mean, could you imagine watching a Superman film and watching Clark Kent for an hour?
No.
And never seeing Superman show up? It's not a Superman film then.
No, it's not. Anyway. Okay.
Hey, one last little Star Wars thing. Have either, Elliot, I assume you played around in it a little. Have either of you guys had any experience with Vader Immortal?
I have not.
No.
On the Oculus.
Yeah, so the boy's mom got him one because there's a VR game on Steam that he wants to play, and so she got him an Oculus. But we were getting the link hooked up to his new laptop and everything, and so while he was over here during that week between Christmas and New Year's, wanted to give him an opportunity to play around with it, and so I got Vader Immortal for him, Oh my God.
Pretty awesome.
Oh, it's amazing. And the cool thing about it too is that it really does. I mean, obviously it assesses your space that you're in, and the characters are set to their heights. So when Vader walks on to screen, I'm looking at him in the eye. But when Liam was playing the game and Vader walked onto screen, I saw him do this. Because Vader's like 2 feet taller than him.
That's awesome.
It was pretty cool. That's anyway. Sweet. Well, it looks like Ron is already logged off early. So for those of you who've stuck around with us for the extra, 45 minutes or so, we appreciate it. Looks like it's going to be a while before we'll have any Star Wars content to talk about. So you guys will have earlier nights starting next week. Ron, can we tease next week? We didn't even tease it in the main show. Are we going to sit on that, or can we tease it now?
Go ahead. Tease.
No, you know what? We'll just leave it as a tease. You're not going to want, for those of you who have stuck around this long, you're not going to want to miss next week's show. We'll just leave it at that. And we'll tease the details of it once we get through the weekend. How's that sound?
Yeah, maybe. We will. We'll let you know. All right, fellas. Pete,
all right.
Real quick. Thanks for putting out all those bonus episodes at the end of the year. That was pretty amazing. I know we hadn't been putting those out on audio, but you spent the time doing that. I know that's time consumed, man. So I appreciate it and appreciate the effort you put in. Thank you.
My pleasure, man.
All right, guys. Until next week. Looking forward to getting back at it. We'll probably have no baseball news to talk about, but if we don't, we'll do what we do best. We'll just make shit up.
What are you talking about, man? We're going to have great content.
We do have WandaVision coming out. I don't know if we want to talk about that.
We can.
I think we're gonna have more than enough content to fill next week's episode.
All right.